Hi, my name's Wendy from Sunflower Publishing, and I'm really, really delighted to welcome a very special guest this evening for me, this morning for Andrew Cotto, who is an award-winning author of 7 novels and the co-founder of the digital publication Appetito, Italian food and drink. As a journalist, Andrew has contributed regularly to the New York Times, La Cucina Italiana, Men's Journal, Brooklyn Magazine, and many others. He's also written extensively for other publications, including Rolling Stone, Condé Nast, Italy Magazine, the Florentine, Huffington Post, and so on. Andrew lives in Brooklyn, New York. I've heard of that, with his wife and 2 teenage children. And he is a prolific writer. So, benvenuti, Andrew. I'm so glad
Salve,
to be
grazie.
speaking to you.
It's a pleasure speaking with you, though I must correct your bio. It's a little bit dated. I am no longer married, and my children
Okay,
aren't teenagers anymore. But other than that, everything was great.
well,
I'll take, and it's all good. But thank
it's
you.
all good. Well, I
I mean,
have.
I think
It's
my ex-wife would be surprised to hear that we're still married if she ever caught this.
I know it's too early in the morning for you, but not here in Italy. Not here in Italy. So I
Oh,
have a nice bottle of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo because I know you like wine. So I'm ready to
a
go
little
with
bit.
my aperitivo.
Good for
So
you. I should have some Prosecco. I guess I could probably have, right?
where to start, Andrew? Where to start? And I was sort of thinking today, should we start with the food, the wine, the books, Italian life? Where to start? Um,
You want
I
me to
think
answer? No,
go,
please.
oh yeah, go on. Where do you want to start?
I think it all began with the books. I
Right?
had a background in food. Of course, growing up
Yeah.
Italian American here in the New York area, every Sunday at my grandparents' house, every night at my house. With my mother was a fabulous cook too, who taught me how to cook. So food has always been an integral part of my life. But where I've ended up career-wise really began with novel writing, and I had no intention of getting sort of segueing into food writing. But after my second novel was published, my agent came to me and said, "There's lots of really strong comments about the food writing in your books." And I was like, food writing? I thought of food writing as being like a critic. And I just sort of realized that I was using food as a device in my storytelling. So there's lots of scenes where food, of course, is sort of, functions as a sensory item, but also, character development, plot development. And from there, I sort of pivoted, kept doing it in all my books now consciously. When I got to the Cucina books,
Yeah.
if I was able
Yeah.
to record from my office, you'd see these books behind me
Yeah. Perfect.
that's how we
Perfect.
met. These two
Yeah.
books
Yeah. Perfect.
I really began leaning into Italian food writing in my fiction, and so through all 7 novels now, it's played a key part. And the last one is called Pasta Mike.
I what I was going to say was the other way I wanted to introduce you, and I was trying to find the right word because of the thing about food. We used to say in England that somebody was a gourmet chef, or gourmet this. Now that's a little outdated, and we tend to just call people a foodie. A foodie. He's a
Yeah.
foodie. She's a foodie expert. And I was sort of thinking this week, oh, foodie. Yes, I could call him that, I suppose. What is the Italian word? And I found the perfect one for you. Let me pronounce this right. Buon gustaio.
Oh, style. I like that. I also like. There's
A
also a
foodie,
wonderful.
a foodie. I've never really heard that too much used in Italy because in England everyone's just a foodie. But
Yeah.
I mean, I can see in your books the love of food. Now, that comes from the DNA, the Italian DNA that you have. Can we just rewind a little bit to your Italian ancestry? Because you've got Italian descent on both sides.
Yeah. It's really
Okay.
interesting. So there is absolutely that point, but there's also another aspect which I'll get to in a sec. I'll start with my family. Yes, my father's family is from Piemonte, and my mother's is from Sicily. And I grew up with
Yeah.
my mom. my mother, her two sisters, and their husbands, and all my brothers and cousins, and my grandparents, of course. We were very close. So we were much more of a Sicilian influence in my growing up. And it wasn't, it wasn't traditional Italian American, like, the stereotype, it was a little, my parents were a little more progressive, and there's my mother's siblings. They're sort of, they're kind of like, 50s and 60s sort of hipster Italians, no tracksuits, they'll look, we weren't yelling at each other across the table. They were all educated and sophisticated, but the food was crucial. My grandmother, we called her Nonni because her mother, Nonna, lived with her as well. So we called her Nonni to distinguish them, was unbelievable cook. I still make her recipes now, every Sunday at their house. It was a huge part of my life. And actually, for a couple of years, when I hit like middle school, my family actually moved. We moved around a few times, to the Midwest and then back to the East Coast, but not to the New York area. And I missed those Sundays like painfully. It was just such a comforting thing. So I learned to appreciate, how important it is to be around the table with people that you care about. Of course, the food is going to be, it's just, that's why everybody says their grandmother's cooking is the best, because it's so sentimental to them, right? It's a trigger for memory and nostalgia and comfort. And so it was sort of rooted into me how valuable that is. And I've kept that with me my entire life. And I learned how to cook at a pretty young age, and I worked at a restaurant in college. I used to cook for my roommates, I used to throw dinner parties when I got out of college, I mean, so I really have remained at the table, and that was really born from my mother's family. But that being said,
The respect that the Italians have for food, which is something that's obviously, inherent in you, it's inherent in Italian life. Do you see that in normal life in America? Are they as passionate about food as the Italians, or do you think that's really quite specific? The fact that this respect, I mean, for example, bon appetito. I'm blown away every time someone says that to me in a restaurant.
mhm.
That that they're using this respectful, have a great meal. What difference does it make? I'm British. No one's ever said that to me before. Did
Well,
you find that though? This respect for the food, and it's obviously something that you bring into your everyday life and your books.
yeah, well, they don't say that in England because the meal's not going to be that great.
What we wouldn't say. Oh,
No,
fighting.
sorry. But no,
Well,
I
we
think you're
wouldn't
absolutely
say
right.
it anyway. You wouldn't. It wouldn't ever be there. It just wouldn't, because I don't think, you eat food just for fuel. In Italy, it's just more than fuel. It's a way of, it's like breaking bread for Jewish people. You come together with the food, uh, isn't it? It's more spiritual than just eating something.
I do think of it as spiritual. I think of being around the
Yeah,
table as like a gospel, and I'm trying to be
yeah,
sacrilegious here, but I do think it's communing, right? I mean, we're
absolutely.
breaking bread,
Absolutely.
if so to speak, and enjoying something together. Right? I think is spiritual, and I don't think anyone appreciates it as much as the Italians do. Certainly not in America. I mean, a big part of Appetito magazine is to sort of get Americans to appreciate what they're consuming, right? To cherish the opportunity to sit around the table together, right? Or even if you're dining by yourself, meals are really important. It's throughout each day you get the opportunity to do something that's meaningful. That's we can say spiritual, and getting
Yeah.
Americans to sort of change their minds about food. Is one of the big ideas for Appetito, and we say that and do it through Italian food because it's the most accessible for reason. It's why UNESCO awarded Italy Italian cuisine cu- cultural heritage of humanity. I mean, it's an incredible recognition, but it's earned because it's so valuable to them. And we could go through history and explain why that is, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's something that they do better than anyone else, and something I embrace. And I was gonna
Feel a bit like a crusade to you? Does it feel, yeah,
Almost. I do feel like it's a mission, not just because I'm passionate about it, because I think it changes people's lives. I mean, my big thing about Italian food is that it fosters wellness.
Yes.
It's healthy
Yes.
physically,
Yes.
so local
Yes.
ingredients, simply prepared,
Absolutely.
proper
Absolutely.
portions is a big argument here in America. Everybody in America, not everybody, the conventional wisdom in America is that more is more when it comes to what's on your plate. And I argue against that. I say you find the proper portion, and to enjoy it in a way that informs your well-being, your mental health. I mean, at Appetito, we have a health and wellness expert on it as one of our contributors.
And you've done a lot of on your YouTube channels, you've got a lot of TV programs that you've appeared on, and you've got the food there for them. I mean, it does. I mean, everybody knows Italian food. I suppose everybody thinks of pasta and pizza. But I looked at a few of your YouTube videos, the Feast of the Seven Fishes, and this is, and the presenter's just like, wow, clams, wow, it's amazing that you're incorporating this way of eating Italian food. There are so many benefits to it. Do you think the message is getting over, Andrew, in
I
America?
do. I really do.
Definitely.
I think especially since the pandemic, there's been such an
Right.
emphasis on food, its value. I think when you were locked in your house for X amount of months, right, taking time to carefully prepare your food and enjoy it became sort of, a pastime of people that probably were too busy before, right? Rushing and eating Americans see people eating as they're walking down the street, right? They're
Yeah.
hurrying to work, they're trying to get done with their lunch so they get back to work. And I think the
Yeah.
pandemic really changed the mindset. I know,
Yeah.
there was a lot of affinity advanced during the pandemic for Italy in general. I mean, it's how
Right.
it boomed tourism-wise after. I think people realized that those things matter than, say, a beach in Hawaii or whatever, or the Bahamas, right? Like going to a place like Italy, going to Florence and heading into the countryside, going to Abruzzo, right? And just having that sort of slow life where you enjoy your food, you can see where it came from. I always tell that, that example. Like when you're sitting outside on a terrace somewhere in the Italian countryside, everything on your plate, you can see basically where it came from, right? Those are the grapes, those are the olives, those are the animals, there's the vegetables, right? They're all right there within your vicinity, more or less. And then I think Americans are finally coming around to that. And I think there's a big push towards it. And it's definitely, one of the objectives of Appetito magazine.
I don't think until you come and live in Italy, you don't quite realize about the food thing and how seasonal it is, how fresh everything is. I mean, it's an eye opener for me as a Brit. I mean, food in England, I think is getting better, but traditionally we've not really had a brilliant reputation with food. But don't say anything.
I
But
was like, no way, I haven't heard that. You're
but
sarcastic. Sorry.
for me, I mean, to live in a place, I have olive trees. In on my land, I have a walnut tree and a fig tree and a pomegranate tree. And as we go through the seasons, you can just take the fruit off the tree. It's an absolute eye opener. A
Yeah.
fresh fig, a lemon tree, an orange tree. It's just an eye opener. That the freshness of the food is paramount. And I never thought I'd turn into a foodie because I was brought up on fish and chips, really, in
Hmm.
England, really. But
Yeah.
go take me back to Italy because you did go and live in Italy for some time. So what prompted that? What did you get from that?
Yeah, it was a life-changing decision,
Right.
and this is what I was going to sort of pivot to when we were talking about my family's background. So I had the heritage of being Italian American, but I also had the experience of living in Italy, on two occasions
Yeah.
actually. I lived in Tuscany for a year, writing my first book. And then I taught for a summer in Rome at John Cabot University. I spent the summer
Right.
there. Of course, I've been hundreds of times, but you're right. Living there day to day is a different
Mm,
experience when you're on holiday.
sure.
When you have your own kitchen and you can go to the local market and the produce is coming in from the fruttivadora guy on the corner and you're seeing what's good. It makes a difference. And what brought me there was that I was working in a corporate job and that job had a really great expense account. And what I used to do as someone who loved food, instead of like taking people golfing or fishing or whatever, my clients, I would take them to eat at Italian restaurants in New York City. And I was living on Mulberry Street, which was our little Italy, right? In Manhattan, at least. And, so I knew all the red sauce joints, which were fine. And I grew up, Italian American food. I'll eat a chicken Parmesan or whatever. I like it very much. But also, that's when, and this is the 90s when regional Italian food started arriving in New York City.
Right.
Restaurants dedicated to the food of Rome, to the cuisines of Piemonte, to Tuscan food, and I started realizing there was all these different regions and getting an education about the way Italy actually worked. Because all I really ever thought of was like Sicily, right? And of course I knew Rome, Florence, Venice, right? But I hadn't really thought beyond, the Abruzzo was a mystery to me, right? Marche, never heard of. So I started learning
It
about
still
these
is, I think.
the cuisines and how distinct they were for one another,
Yeah.
and so much so that I said I had to go visit. Right, Tuscany sort of seemed like a place for me. I really like Tuscan food, so I went on a holiday to Venice, Florence, and Rome, which is very much like a 101 Italy visit for Americans at least. And I thought Venice was very
Sounds
amazing.
like the Grand Tour. I think that's where they used to go on the Grand Tour in the, was it Victorian times? They
Yeah,
did
yeah.
Florence, do Rome, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, maybe Naples down in Naples.
Yeah,
But
yeah, sure.
I was amazed by Venice, of course. But I got to Florence, though things really changed dramatically for me. I was sitting on the terrace, sipping prosecco before dinner, and I said to myself, I have to live here. Right? I was so overwhelmed with the beauty, with the accessibility of the food, with everything. It just felt magical to me. The light, it was a calling. It was like boom. I said I was married then, right? I said to my wife, we're moving here. She's like, yeah, okay, keep drinking, right? But I guess 3 years later, I'd quit my job. I'd always wanted to be a writer too. I came out of college with desire to write, to communicate with people, to evoke mercy and empathy and tell stories. I was a very good storyteller growing up. I come from a family of storytellers, so I felt like that's what my calling was. But I chickened out. I didn't want to be a starving artist. So I took a corporate job, but after like 12 years of it, I was really, really itchy to get, to pursue my dream. And Italy sort of was the trigger. Once I got there, I
That's
said, I
it.
know I'm not wasting any more time in my life. Right? I was in my early 30s, late 20s, right? I'm not wasting any more time in my life. I am doing this. And, I convinced my wife to come with me. My daughter, who's now 24, was a toddler when we came over. So the three of us spent a year in the hills south of Florence, just south of Florence, right? It's literally,
Mm.
15 minutes into the city center, but it felt like we were in Abruzzo or wherever, way removed. It was gorgeous. And I finished my first novel, and then we came back to the States, and I started. That's how my career was launched. So that experience of living there changed my worldview. Because I got to like pursue my dream and make it a reality, which was very validating. But also, it taught me how Italians truly eat, right? And how
Yes.
they enjoy food. I mean, people are, you're going to go to Italy for a year, you're going to gain so much weight, blah, blah, blah. And I came back so much healthier physically, mentally. I was so sharp. I was just so in love with the
Did you
life I enjoyed
feel
there.
this is home? I'm back on the motherland. I'm back in the motherland. Did you feel that way? I mean,
I didn't. I felt like it was a new territory for me because
okay.
Sicily might have felt like the motherland, but like
Is
my family, even though we were Sicilian, right,
yeah,
by descent, and my grandparents were immigrants, right, they didn't like try. They wanted us to be Americans, right? They weren't like preaching Sicily. They never went back to visit. They never encouraged us to go visit, and there wasn't like a big sort of like push to embrace our Italian roots.
I
It was more like let's be American, which is very common. One of the things that most people don't recognize is that generation, that my grandparents' generation, faced a lot of discrimination in America, right?
yeah,
We have
yeah,
Columbus Day because I think 13 Sicilians were lynched in New Orleans, right? So they were trying to distance themselves. We didn't
yeah.
speak Italian in the house. My grandfather didn't speak any English, but
Oh, when was that? When would your grandparents have left Sicily then? I mean,
they came
would they
in
have
the
done
1950s, I guess.
1950s, right?
Yeah.
So would they have they'd have gotten the boat, they'd have done the Ellis Island thing, they did all of that.
Um, Actually, my grandfather came in illegally through Canada. So they
Okay.
went to Canada first, and then then
Right.
then came over the border
Oh.
that way. So there's no record of my grandparents on Ellis Island. Um,
Oh.
Maybe my father's family, but again, we weren't particularly connected to their heritage from Piemonte. No, I love Piedmont now. It's like my favorite region next to Tuscany. But yeah, so there wasn't that big connection. So when I got to Italy, though, I felt like this was my place, though. I felt like it connected to me personally, not from a familial standpoint,
Yeah,
but this is
yeah,
where I need to be around this. And that's pretty much the essence of Cucina Tipica. Even though I didn't write this book when I was there, I wrote it later. But like the soul of this book is the way an American who arrives there feels on the ground.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like the concept of the book is that he goes on holiday and says he's never going to leave. And you know, there's a sequel, so he pulled it off. But like, but that feeling of being so alive, right?
yeah.
And not necessarily connected to other Italians, but like the
But
land,
just connected to the
food.
place.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
connected to like the terroir, so to speak, you know,
Yeah.
using terminology, just spoke to me. And I still feel that way. Every time I go there, I'm going in a few weeks, right? I feel
Right.
as more alive than I do anywhere else.
It's kind of strange in that, there's a lot of expats here, as you can imagine, in every region. And we've got the Brits and we've got the Belgians and the Germans and the Dutch and all the rest of it. And we've got a lot of Americans. Now, I don't know anything about the Belgians and their ancestry, but the Americans, I know exactly why they've come back to Italy. They've come back to Italy because their grandparents went to America, went to the New World in whether it was the 20s, 30s, or 40s, and now they want to come back. They want to come back to Italy and make it their home. It seems like that calling to go back to the mothership is stronger in Americans than anybody else. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Well, I think Americans love Italy, even if you're not of Italian
Oh
descent.
yes,
And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
so
yeah,
many expat, I have a lot of expat friends there who have not have a drop of Italian blood in them.
yeah,
But I do think the ones that do have the heritage, many of them do sort of yearn for it because they were sort of denied it growing up, I think. I
yeah,
feel like,
yeah.
had they been taught, to embrace it more growing up and visited growing up. I have friends who spent their summers like in Naples, for example, and they're really connected to it. But other people felt like that might have been denied to them, and then they felt that calling for their roots, and their attitude, right? And there's lots of
Did you
these
speak
programs you see.
Italian as a child? Did you
No,
learn?
but they would no. I mean, we knew curse words.
Yeah, it's weird to think that they did distance themselves, didn't they, from
I mean,
Sicily?
Italians. I mean, this is a little bit extreme, but Italians were kind of considered, especially Southern Italians who were dark, more olive skinned colored. Were considered others by a lot. There's lots of discrimination.
Yeah,
So
there
they were
was in
trying
England
to.
as well, to be honest. I think that there was also a lot of discrimination against Italians. Well, talking about Italy and Sicily and Piemonte, let's move on to the book then, Cucina Tipica. So this was the first book in the series about Jacoby, who travels to Tuscany. Just give us a quick synopsis of that then, Andrew, please.
Sure. So there's a character named Jacoby Pines who's of Italian descent, though on his
Mm,
mother's side. And she, she passed when he was very young, so he didn't really grow up with much connection to Italy. But he has a great palate, and he is engaged to a woman who in New York, they live in New York City, who was a travel writer. And Jacoby ends up losing his job. They didn't call it cancel culture back when I wrote the book, but that's kind of what happened to him. He sort of made a silly joke in a group text, and it cost him his career. So he's suffering. He's struggling with depression. His fiance, who's a food writer, as I mentioned, travel writer, thinks that okay, this guy loves food. He's got to go to Italy. He's never been there. Like, let's go there. They go for an extended period. She has like an assignment, for I think a year. And when they arrive, that's when he realizes that like he can't leave. Okay? And the reason that he can't leave is because primarily because there's the physical beauty, of course, the serenity, right? But also the fact that really good food and really good wine, which are very important to his health, right, are accessible to everyone there. Right.
mm.
There's a lot of comments in the book when he's like, what this meal would have cost had we had it in New York City.
I
Right?
know. You said something about the wine as well.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
much this would have been in America?
no,
How much
I
this
mean,
would have been? Truffles. Do you know how much this would have been?
you have to think
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. Well, that goes without saying. I'm not going to tell you how much my wine was.
Well, I know. I mean, I always tell the story of when I lived in Florence. I used to go down to the consortium in the village nearby, a Chianti Classico consortium. They had a storefront with a vat of Chianti Classico. I'd bring a big jug that was about 5 bottles worth of wine that they'd fill up out of like a gas nozzle, right? It was €9 for 5 bottles of wine. Buying it in bulk, of course, but like, I mean, that's what he says. Like, eating well and drinking well in America is a privilege, right? In
Yeah.
Italy, it's a right. Everyone can
Yes.
afford to go to a nice little.
That's exactly it. That really is a perfect way to say that.
And that's my favorite thing about Italy, and what I think what makes the people there live long and be fabulous. They're healthy and there's some gyms, well, there maybe, but like people aren't like crazy nutso at exercise. It's the bike riders, right? They do here, like you do in New York, is
But
like
if
super
you
machine.
see the nonnas getting off the bus in the village with, they're in their 80s, these women, black, still black here, because it's a very traditional region. 3 bags of shopping, walking down the hill after they've got off the bus, and you think, wow, wow, that's quite amazing that they do that.
Yeah,
Now, I've I love the book. I really love the book. And I've got some, just a few quotes that I just want. Well, obviously you've written it, so you know what they are. But, for everybody else that hasn't read the book,
sure.
the way
Tell me.
that you describe food is, whoa, off the planet. They sat at a shifted table in the dingy room among the indifferent locals and took a basket of lightly fried calamari, shrimp, bream, and whole anchovy, seasoned. I feel hungry thinking of it. Seasoned with salt and lemon, followed by a pureed and garlicky fish soup, then steamed prawns dipped in aioli, grilled sardines, plates of pasta with pesto, and plates of pasta with clams. They washed it all down with carafes of a local white wine known as Vermentino. You really have to love food to describe it so beautifully, Andrew, don't you? Really. And that so comes out. That so comes out in the books. But then I wouldn't expect anything less. I mean, I just wouldn't, because I know what your background is. And every time I'm sort of reading it, I'm thinking, oh, I love that quote. I love that quote. Um, how do you pronounce it? Not Jacoby. What's your pronunciation?
Jacoby.
Oh, Jacoby.
Jacoby. The Italians, I gave him a funky name because I know Italians go crazy and
Jacoby. Sorry,
Americans have like,
Jacoby.
so they all call him Jake.
Jacoby felt as peaceful and inspired as he had in months. This is what you were saying. Maybe ever. The best 2 meals of his life had been over the first 2 days in Italy. The country itself was more beautiful than pictures could capture. The people spoke a lovely language and wore elegant clothes. It was all good, and he wanted in. That's so, so lovely. That completely encapsulates what you felt, I think, what a lot of us expats feel, even those of us that don't have the Italian heritage. And your descriptions of the food and his relationship to it. I mean, we're not going to give away the ending or anything like that, but it's a beautiful book, Andrew. It really is a beautiful book. But there's a couple of things that I need you to translate for me because I don't know what they mean. Right. I mean, there are so many beautiful quotes about him. Right, let me find them. Right. Claire's cousin, Dolores, a British Lollapalooza. Now, please tell me what one of those is, and what it is, and would I know one if I met one? Because I've never.
You definitely would know one if you met one. A Lollapalooza is like a big
Oh,
personality.
where's the thing at the back, that translates the words for you?
Yes, a Lollapalooza is like,
Lollapalooza?
like a
What?
walking festival. She's like a walking festival unto herself, right? Outgoing, charismatic, loud,
Okay. Okay.
Dressed a certain way, like her
Oh,
clothes are
I'm
kind
sure.
of
I'm
trendy, right?
sure I would
She's
recognize.
wearing like a romper or something. I can't remember. And she speaks very, she curses and she drinks and she
Yeah.
smokes.
Oh, right. I got it. I've got it. Yeah, I've
I
got
love she's my favorite character. I love Dolores.
it. Sometimes, American books, I'm reading a lot of those, and British books and all the rest of it. Sometimes the words don't cross over sometimes because the language, I think, is moving so far apart now from British English to American English. We're almost saying, what? What? Can you translate that for us? So I
Yeah.
needed you to do that. Absolutely. Perfect. Perfect explanation. So after you wrote this book, and it was very well received, your some of the reviews are absolutely delightful, which brings me on to my next question. Do you read your reviews and how do they affect you?
Oh, I absolutely read them, and and
Okay.
it took me just the way you might imagine. Like the good reviews make me very, very happy, and the ones that are critical make me want to cry. Right? Though I also know that negative reviews, are oftentimes rooted in subjectivity. Not
Yes.
everyone is qualified. Not everyone who offers a review, because you can't offer reviews online. Any reader can do so, right? Is necessarily looking at things objectively. It really only hurts if I think what they say is true. Right? You're like, ooh.
Right.
Right, and I don't know I can't remember which ones for this book, but other books too. I mean, I've generally been well received, both from
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
professional critics and
Very.
amateurs, but I also think like, also like you take it seriously, but you want to, I mean, the way you get better at things is to consider what someone has said. So consider criticism. And if it
Yeah.
makes sense, take it with you.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it doesn't, just
Yeah.
throw it away. Yeah.
It's a different perspective. I mean, I take great pains with my reviews to make sure that they are, if a book's this thick, I don't say, oh my God, this book was just took three. I say, this is a weighty book. I try and spin it so that it doesn't sound negative in any way because
Mhm.
I know how long it takes to write a book. And not that I've written one, but all my authors and things. It takes a long time. It is you pouring out your soul and everything that you've got. So I would never, ever, dismiss a book. But some of your reviews, I love this book. All the experiences over the years visiting Italy are all relived in the book. I can smell and taste the food and the wine. Drive through the villages, stroll through Florence. This book made me happy. If I had a review like that, I'd be extremely pleased about that. Um,
I am. And thanks for reminding me. And I love this. This is
Well,
like
you can
therapy for me.
always, if ever you feel down, Andrew, just go to Amazon and just look at those reviews. As a person who is addicted to Italy and to Florence, this book ticked all the boxes. I also have an Italian foodie blog, so the description of the food and the drink really resonated with me. Lovely descriptions of the countryside, great story, and I was hooked. Thoroughly recommended. Um, and the last one was, the book takes you on the adventure of the guy. He discovers Italy, he makes friends, and he finds himself. Um, I think it's charming. It really is. So after this book, after the Cucina Tipica, then you moved on to the next one where he's got his adventures in Rome. Tell me about how you moved that narrative on.
Yeah, so the premise for Cucina Tipica was that Jacoby arrives in Italy and he never wants to leave, and the plot is him trying to find a way to stay. Obviously, there's a sequel. He achieved that, right?
Yeah,
Um, and,
yeah.
and the means which they achieve it involves some property that he acquires through great serendipity with his expat friend Bill, who's actually a real person. Bill Guyan was my friend from Rome.
Right.
Yeah, he's
Right.
yeah, he's like I didn't even change his name. I just made Bill Bill. And
Is Bill gay in real life?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's still my friend. I'm going to see him in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. But so I had those two, and in the book, the character Bill had lived in Rome for like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And those two are business partners now, and they're trying to do business in Italy through the phone from Florence, and Bill says it's just not going to happen, right? For us to get what we need, they need some sort of license or to open their business. They need to go down to Rome and knock on doors and get people to
Yeah.
approve, right? I mean, nodding to the administrative complications of living in Italy, which I'm sure you're well aware. And that's what brings them to Rome. So about half the book is set in Tuscany. Jacob, it starts there, of course, then Jacoby goes back and forth between Rome and back to Florence. And then half is in Rome, which I was so pleased to incorporate it because I love Rome too. I mean, if I had to move, even though I'm a Toscano, true and true. I think if I was going to live in Italy again, it would be Rome because I need the big city. I love Florence, but
Only
it's just
2 hours from
long.
Rome. In fact, well, there is a dip, as I can see the mountains outside my kitchen window, and we've got the Gran Sasso, and then you've got the Maiella, and then there's a dip, and that's Rome. I mean, they say all roads lead to Rome, don't? That is
Yeah,
Rome. Straight through there, you get
yeah.
to Rome. It's a fantastic road, Andrew. Fantastic.
Is it the old Salt Road? Or that goes to Marche, I think.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Does it go through Amataci?
No.
Okay, so that's the road that goes to Amataci is one that goes, I think, to Ascoli Piceno, in Marche,
Okay.
just north of
Yeah,
you.
that's a little bit
I think that's
north, isn't it?
the old salt
Yeah,
road. The
yeah,
Romans used to take
yeah.
their salt from
Right.
the
Yeah.
Adriatic right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love setting it in Rome. It's and it's a fun little adventure down there, and I'm getting lots of pressure from people to write the third in the series because there's a cliffhanger at the end, right? I mean, a serious cliffhanger. I mean, I don't ever do that in my books. It just occurred to me like towards the end, like let's do this plot twist cliffhanger thing, and then obviously be obliged to pick it back up. I just haven't. Though that it is next on my list. I've had other books to write. I've been immersed in other things.
Well,
So
that brings me very neatly to some more questions because
sure.
I just want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the author. So we know what inspired you to start writing the books. Um, what do you hope that readers will take away from your books?
I like to make people feel less alone. People to say, hey, this is something happening to a character that I feel too. Like in the case of Jacoby, for example. I mean, he's depressed, right? He's heartbroken about losing his job. He's immersed in regrets and shame and anger, and I think people feel that,
Yeah.
and I think that also make people feel, what it feels like to be joyful. I mean, there's a nice love story in the Cucina books and in all my books. There's tenderness, which I'm trying to evoke, empathy, mercy, again, and a feeling of solidarity. I mean, I think, life is hard. And one of the best things about storytelling, other than entertaining people, is creating community. Like, hey, I get that. I can relate to that character, even though they might not look the same or be from the same background, etc., same gender, right? But everyone knows what heartbreak feels like, and everybody knows what hope feels like, and joy. Of course, I'm a happy ending guy. I love celebrating life and getting people to think, that the complications that we all face can be overcome, right? And that the best thing in the world is other people, right? And food, right? And wine. And then
He lost his job
yeah.
through an unfortunate event. Was that real? Did that ever happen?
I actually not at that time when I wrote it, but subsequent to writing it, I lost a teaching job because I taught for many, many years as a professor. It was,
Yeah,
it was, it
yeah,
was a it was a part-time small gig, but I taught
yeah.
some of my students a story that they were offended by and then ended up being fired for it. Um,
Right.
so it came sort of back to get me.
It happens. It,
But at the time, they didn't even call it canceling. I don't know if the term woke was even
yeah, yeah.
relevant.
I just wondered when I read it whether, I mean, sometimes you just don't know with authors whether or not that was really an event that has just been used as part of the story, or you needed you needed something to get him out of that to Italy. So,
Yeah.
maybe it was that. Maybe
I
it was
mean,
that.
I just address that one more thought here is I think that what makes fiction writers, valuable is like again, we're not these aren't memoirs, right? So it's not all
No,
based on what happened to me. What
no,
I'm
no, of
doing all the
course
time
not.
is pulling from other people. I'm paying attention to the world in which we live, right?
Yeah,
And it's not just my experiences that I want to share. So I'm paying attention to everyone's experiences, right? I'm gobbling it all in. I'm taking it all in, right? I am like an open channel to take in information. So other people's experiences are ones I can use. So I get that a lot, right? Did that really happen to you, or is that it's like no, this is why I'm a fiction writer, right?
yeah. But you don't know though. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, sometimes it can be it's so fictional. Every character. You just never know, really, do you?
No, and like, so yes, some things did happen to me, and some things I
Yeah,
happened to other
yeah,
people that I know, or things something I just make up out of whole cloth,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, did you encounter any surprising discoveries during your writing about you, about people, or the process of writing? How has that made you feel?
Yeah, I think in order to, be successful as a writer, you sort of have to sort of open yourself up, to admissions about your weaknesses. I mean, the last book that's been published of mine, it's a couple of years old now, but I just finished another one, but it's not published yet. It's called Pasta Mike, Story of Friendship and Loss. It's fiction, but it's very much based on the experiences I had with my closest friend, who we were baptized together. We knew each other our whole lives, and he died in his early 40s of leukemia. And it absolutely broke my heart, and I didn't understand how, right? He was just my friend, I was just that was my mindset. Right. And it wasn't his spouse or his lover or his sibling, right, or his niece and nephew. I
Oh,
was a friend, right, and and the his loss like really devastated me. It had a huge
yeah,
impact on my life, right? Um, and having to write about it, right? And not having to, choosing to write about it, made me open up to other vulnerabilities that I might have, right? And I think that's one of the nice things about writing is that when you are making it personal, in this case, right, you really have to expose yourself. I mean, that book, people were like, that really happened to you, right? Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, that really happened to me, and you think people are going to judge you, right? Or people are going to say like that that you're weak, right? Or being a man, right, and admitting to having heartbreak over the loss of a friend. You know, I felt took some courage, but it was also very liberating, right? And I feel like being able to
yeah,
share it.
yeah.
I didn't intend on making it into a novel. I wrote it as an article for like a men's health magazine, and then from there, I was sort of encouraged to take that story and then make it's a novella actually. And it was a grueling process, and I'm thankful it was during the pandemic because I
Yeah.
had to be home and like cry every day when I was writing it, and not have to go to work, afterwards. So, but I do think that that
They
there's
say, don't they? It's quite a cathartic experience. I mean, whatever people have gone through in life, there are so many experts that say, write it down, write it down. And as your emotions come out, and obviously, this one did for you. Was there anything about that book? Were there any scenes in that book, Pastor Mike, that you found particularly difficult to write, to confront?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's probably like I actually just turned it into a one-man play and performed the play recently as
Right.
a reading from a script, and that, that was really hard. But like there's a number of scenes in the book where the character of Andy, which is Mike called me Andy, breaks down. He literally has a breakdown, right? And like when it dawns on him, in one scene in particular is when something really good happens to Andy. So Andy's a writer, right? And Andy gets a phone call, a voice message from a literary agent who's saying, "I really want to, pick up your novel, represent your novel, etc." And he's just like beside himself. As a writer, this is like the dream, right? When you're a fledgling writer, he's a young writer at the time. Right. And it's like you can't believe what's happening, and you're full overwhelmed with joy. And then he picks up his phone and goes to call Mike, and then gets his voicemail and realizes Mike's dead. right? And then he thinks to himself, right, this is going to haunt me the rest of my life, right? Every time I get some good news, he's so instinctively connected to
Oh,
his friend, right, that every time something good happens, right,
yeah.
it's going to be undermined by sorrow because you can't share it
Oh,
with the person in the world
oh,
you're closest with, right? And
yes.
that's very true. I mean, that's not what happened to me with like the literary agent calling
No,
me. But I
no,
had a
no.
story in my head, like I was had a really great night one night. I'm like, I can't wait to tell Mike. And I had to pull my car over and like, cry my brains out because it was just like, this is never going to go away. And I have to admit, this is not, it's like Mike passed away 13 years ago, right? And his picture's on my fridge right there. He's got my daughter and
But
leaning on him.
you're still dealing with the grief and the loss, though, and that doesn't really go away, does it? Not with
No.
a
I mean,
really,
people tell you that it will, and they say that there's like a new
yeah.
normal, blah, blah, blah. I haven't found it to be the case. I mean, it bums me out multiple times a day. Right? It doesn't ruin my life. It doesn't prevent me from living
No,
and going to
no.
work and being a good father, right, and a friend. But it just bugs me every day. You know.
Which character in your books do you relate to the most and why?
Well, I mean, obviously the character of Andy in Pasta Mike is very
Yes. Yes.
biographical, but the other ones that are pure fiction is actually my first book. And as much as I love Jacoby, right, the protagonist in my
Not
first book,
you. That's not
yeah,
you.
it's not me. No, I mean he's pulled out of I don't even know who he is. I don't know where I came up with him. Um, but I have I have a noir series called they all have blues in the title. There's Attleboro Blues and Black Irish Blues, and I just finished Harlem River Blues, and that character is Caesar Styles. He's the protagonist. I wish he reminded me of me because he's really tough and cool and poetic. He's more like my older brother kind of, and a couple other
Okay.
people sort of combined. But the protagonist in my first book, The Domino Effect, it's a coming of
Yeah.
age story about a kid from
Oh.
Queens who ends up going to like, a boarding school in New Jersey. I love that book. It was my first book. It's what I sort of pivoted. It's what I launched my career on. It's what I chose to quit my job and pursue. So it has special meaning to me. But I also think most people's first books, most fiction writers' first novels, their protagonist is very much based on their own life. And what we call a Roman clef is what they call that, right? So the details of the kid's life are not mine, but like his personality is mine. The kid's father is my father, basically. So I really like him because I really like me. um, but
You've
I also think
been
he's really
blessed.
charismatic.
I
He's
mean,
like,
when
and
I
then he,
look at all the things, I mean, when I Google you, my goodness, you pop up everywhere. You really do. There's TV programs and cooking and the books and the writing and the articles. You pop up everywhere. Do you feel blessed that you've had the life that you want, Andrew?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I practice gratitude. I wake up in the
Yeah.
morning, and first thing I say to my doggy, who's my new best friend, is today's gonna be a great day, and we're very lucky, right? And I'm appreciative of it. I also take great, stock in the fact that I took a chance. Right? I was in my early 30s, I guess, when I quit a very promising career. Right?
Yeah.
If I hadn't done that, where I would be right now, would be totally different. I'd certainly
Yes.
be happier, right? But I'm proud of the fact that I pursued my dream, and have achieved what I consider success, right? I mean, I'd love to see
I
these books
think
made into
you
movies
do.
and
I
have
think
more
you
readers,
I
but
think you
I'm on my own terms. I
Yeah.
think I'm
Yes,
successful.
in
I
terms
take
of the
I
writing.
take great pride in that, and I have a
Go,
legacy.
going back with writing, is that something that was always there in a younger version of Andrew, enjoying writing? Did you write at school? Did you?
No, I love this question. I'm always happy to bring this up, even if someone doesn't ask me, because my path to being a writer was my friends I grew up with like still can't believe I'm a writer. I'm like, what? You? I mean, I didn't grow up reading books. I grew up,
Foodie, yes, but not a
yeah,
writer.
I was not a voracious reader. I like Roald Dahl books, and I like, Danny the Champion of the World is probably the first book I ever remember reading. But I wasn't a reader. I mean, I was a punk and an athlete and a kid out who I was outside. I lived in a bunch of great neighborhood. We were always outside all day long. And then I like TV shows. So I was into narratives, but I never wrote a word. But I came from a great family of storytellers. Both my mother and her two sisters and my father and the two brother-in-laws were just such charismatic people. And every time we got together, they would tell stories like to each other in the kitchen. Remember that time Joey Mack went over? And I used to love listening to them because I knew that the storyteller, right, had attention.
Mm,
And I liked attention, right? I wanted to sort of be in, in the middle of things and foster goodwill and inclusivity. Right? And I knew that being a storyteller was good. So when I go back to the neighborhood, when we weren't like throwing rocks at each other or playing games, we'd sit around on the curb and like tell stories. And I was a good storyteller. And I got to college as an athlete, actually. I was a great baseball player, and I thought baseball was going to be my ticket. Then I realized
okay.
how boring it was to be a college athlete
So
and how
you
time
this
consuming it was. So I quit. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And an English teacher said to me, "Hey, you're a good writer, Cotto." And I was like, "Really? I am?" She's like, "Yeah, you know how to tell a story. You're good with words." So I sort of put the idea in my head, and I changed my major to being an English major with an emphasis on writing, and that's sort of where it was born from. But like, still to this day, my kids I grew up with can't believe that you, Andy Cotto, is a writer. You know,
what does fame mean to you? Literary
what does?
success,
I'm sorry.
fame, literary success. Is it the fame? Is it the money? Is it what does it mean to you? I mean, if I met you at a dinner party and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" How would you introduce yourself? Would you say, "I'm a writer"? Would you say, "I'm a foodie"? How would you define yourself?
I mean, I'd love to be able to reflect on what fame and wealth is, but I don't think I have that.
It's
I don't think
well,
I'm
you're
qualified.
young yet, Andrew. You're still
Thank
young.
you. But I do introduce myself as a writer, and it always makes me
Okay.
feel very proud. I mean, when my old job, I was a compact disc sales representative, right? So that didn't make me
Okay.
feel proud when someone, what do you do? I worked for a company that manufactured compact
I
discs
prefer not
for
to
record
say.
labels, and it was kind of a fun, glamorous job. I had great expenses. I mentioned travel, the music industry, but I never felt like a tingle when someone said, "What do you do?" When
Mm,
someone says, "Well, what do you do now?" I said, "I'm a writer. I'm an author."
yeah.
And then really, what do you write? I said, "Well, I write books. I write for the New York Times. I write, I have my own magazine, and like, I feel proud, and because I think
So
it's something
sure.
that not everyone can do, and I do it well, and I think it's been validated, which
Yeah.
is, I feel like a success. And again, I define success by my own terms, right?
Well, that's great. And what is next in terms of books? I mean, don't divulge any secrets, but
No, I don't.
where are you? Is there what's in the pipeline for you, Andrew?
I just finished the third in the Caesar Styles mystery series, right? Called Harlem River Blues, that I referred to earlier, and I love it. I'm actually trying to, I have one of those is translated into Italian. The first one,
Yes.
it's
Yeah, I
called
saw
It's called
that.
Brooklyn
Wow.
Mystery. Though unfortunately the publisher went out of business, so I think it's still available digitally. I don't know, but the translator and I are working together to find a new publisher in Italy
Right.
the
Okay.
for that one, the second one, and take the third one that hasn't been published yet. I'm trying to take more control over my career. I mean, all my books are traditionally published, but
Yeah.
publishing in America is very difficult. Right? And getting, I'm looking to have these books made into movies, or TV
Okay.
series, right? And I'm deciding to take the reins on that and try to make that
Yeah.
happen. So I'd love to see them materialize. I'm also going to keep writing. I'm going to do the third. I think I'm going to call it Cucina Italiana, even though I know that's a magazine. The third in the series, because they're going to be in different regions, including Abruzzo, and
Right.
Marche through this. I had the
When are
plot.
you coming? Sorry, when are you coming out to Italy, did you say? You're coming out
I'm
soon.
going on a wine tour for work in the north, in the Veneto and
Nice.
Trentino and Friulia, early May, and then I'm staying on for 5 more days between
Oh, wow.
Venice, Florence, and Rome for some.
We have in May, when's that next month? We have in May a weekend, which is our Cantina Aperta weekend, and all the vineyards are open for wine tasting. I mean, for somebody like me, it's just manna from heaven, really.
Oh yeah, they'd cut me. They'd kick me out of Abruzzo. And I
I
love
mean,
Abruzzo.
you've got to come to Abruzzo. I mean,
I
something
know.
like,
I did. I had my 50th birthday dinner at Ristorante Reale. The Nicola
okay,
Mito place. Yeah, there's the Casa Belladonna. Is it Casa Donna is the hotel, and then Ristorante Reale is a restaurant of a guy named Nico Romito, who's a Michelin starred
yeah,
chef.
yeah.
It's in Abruzzo. It's in
Where?
that set. Oh, it's a small little town. Just look up
Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah, yeah,
Ristorante
yeah,
Reale.
yeah.
But yeah, I love Brazil, and I should be back. I need to do. I really like Marche, Abruzzo,
Yes.
Emilia
Yeah,
Romagna.
they're all
Um,
neighbours. They're a bit posh in Marquay. It's a little
yeah, I
bit
know.
more. It's a little bit more tidier.
Yeah.
They got more money than
Well,
we have.
yeah, I know. But
But
I'm
Abruzzo
also
is go on.
so I mentioned Pasta Mike, and I made it into a play. And I did the one man play from the script, and I need to sort of it was pretty devastating. So much work, right? You hear me, Wendy? Yes, your screen is first.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
okay. I need to focus on that too. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to like take charge of like I
Yeah.
love
Those
books, and I think I
yeah.
need a bigger audience. So I'm trying to grow my audience with the ones
Yes.
I've already accomplished while still moving forward with new projects. And of course, I have Appetito magazine, which is my full-time job, uh,
Yes.
which is a
Yes.
lot. I love it, and we're really growing, and it's a great platform for me. And it also creates a really nice life. I mean, I'm out at Italian restaurants all the time. I get to go to Italy for
Somebody's got to do it,
right. I
haven't
mean,
they?
people. I mean, people say I give them FOMO. They use that term. And and like you're right. It is really fun. I mean, and I'm like the community
It
stuff.
sounds it.
I love all my closest friends these days are my people I work with. They
Yeah.
contribute to magazine, or they're my colleagues, my business partner. I mean, it's such a nice little community we have in New York of
Yeah.
Italian food enthusiasts, and I have some pretty,
You know, the regionality of it all never ceases to amaze you. I mean, even within towns in Abruzzo, you would have a different menu. I mean,
yeah.
it's bizarre. I mean, we went to a restaurant last week, and one of my friends said, I'd like a ragu, but I don't really want it with the mugnaya, which is the traditional Abruzzese pasta. It's quite thick. And she said, I don't really want it with mugnaya. And he said, well, they would do that in the next town over the hill, but not here. I mean, not only is it regional, it's always, we don't
Oh yeah.
serve mugnaya here. They do that 3 miles away, but not here. I mean, and I
No,
think he put it with fettuccine or something like that. I don't know, but it never ceases to amaze me the respect that is given to food. And it's just awesome.
I
Um,
know. I know.
so on that note, then, Andrew, can I thank you for sharing a wonderful, I mean, we could talk for a week, I think, on
I know.
food,
This is great. I mean, we
on
should just, as soon as we get
regions
done,
and,
we'll just pick up the phone and keep this conversation going. No,
and
thank you. This is
wine and
great.
all the
I mean,
rest of it. I
finding
mean,
people like you who are passionate about this and have the
oh
ability
God,
to
yeah,
break it down.
absolutely.
I mean, between the food and the wine and the literature, we're a great combination. And I'm really
Yeah.
thrilled that you invited me on.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. I mean, if you ever come to Abruzzo, please tell me.
of course,
We'll arrange a book signing or something and a wine thing, and all the rest of it. We'll arrange that. I mean, there are so many Americans here,
yeah. Oh, I
uh,
know.
yeah, as well as everybody else, obviously. But it would be wonderful just to sort of share. I mean that books and food in Italy. I mean, that's my kind of evening. That really is
I
my
know.
kind of evening.
Absolutely. I do this really fun thing here at events at places in New York. And I did it out in LA recently too, where like I read passages from the book at like either in
Wonderful.
and then the food that I just read is served.
Oh
So
my,
I've done it in
really?
restaurants. I've done it in a
Oh
social.
wow,
Yeah, it's really fun
wow.
because like
Oh God, that sounds a must. We would
yeah.
have to do something like that.
Oh, it's
Because
so fun.
in the book you mention going to Noccia and the tartufo and the heads of the
Cinghiale.
cinghiali.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I know exactly what you mean. We've seen it.
Yeah.
We've tasted it. We've been there. I know exactly. But for anyone interested in the food and the wine and the books and the stories, you're my man.
Thank you. Yeah, and all the information. Thank you. I think I'm so happy to have met you. This is great. Everything's at www.andrewcotto.com.
Yeah.
They can find all the stuff. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook as Andrew Cotto. And I love hearing from people. I can't thank you enough for all your time today. What a blast.
Well, it's been a blast. It
If I,
really
if I only had some wine to drink with it.
has. It's a bit early for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But
I,
no,
I know I normally would, but I had to go out. Yeah.
Andrew, it's been lovely, and thank you again for your time and wishing you lots and lots of success in Bocca Lupo for everything that you do. It's been marvelous, it really has. So thank you.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
Take care. See you
You
soon.
too. I look forward to it.
Ciao. Oops.